Hello, I'm Philip Muggleston, and in this series of videos we're covering the predictive capabilities native to SAP HANA. In this video we're going to look at troubleshooting. Now sometimes you may have some issues when you're trying to run with the PAL. Maybe you get some error messages or things don't go exactly to plan. So as a first step, I've got 4 suggestions that you might want to go through in order to try to troubleshoot and identify where the issue is. The first one is to actually look and see, is the PAL itself, which is actually part of the application function library, the AFL, is it actually installed? Because this is not standard in HANA from SPS 05. If it is installed, the second thing you might want to look at to see is the AFL underscore wrapper underscore generator, has that actually been created? Because when you restart the HANA server, you need to recreate the AFL wrapper generator procedure. Third area is, if needed, if maybe there are syntax errors or something like that, is to look at the log file, which actually we'll see is in a trace. It's the index server trace. And fourth, something that happens quite often, if you've got code and you want to rerun it, you want to recreate a procedure that's existing, you may have some duplicate procedures and duplicate table types. So you need to learn how to make sure that you get rid of any duplicates if you want to recreate something with the same name. So now let's go into HANA Studio and have a look. So here's an example of some code we might want to run as we work with the PAL. So it's a single exponential smoothing example in time series. We've got our data in the PAL schema. We know, we've seen in many examples already, we need to create types, and we need to create a signature table, and then we need to call the wrapper generator. So why don't we go ahead and try that? So let's connect to the database, connect as system user, and let's run our code. And the first thing we see, there's an error. Okay, that's expected because we're troubleshooting. So we've got an error, cannot call wrapper generator. Okay, something's wrong. Let's have a look. The first thing we would want to do when we're working with this is to just work out, is the PAL and the AFL actually installed and configured correctly? Looks like maybe something's not quite right. So if we go to the catalog as system user, we'll find that there is a sys schema, and within the sys schema there are some tables. And 3 of the tables refer to the AFL. Now these tables should always exist, and if we look at them, for example, AFL packages and preview, we should find that within the AFL packages there is one where the package name is set to PAL. Okay, and that is the package. So it looks like the AFL has been installed and PAL kind of exists. However, we can go one step further and we can actually go to the functions underscore table. And in there, we actually get a list of all of the different functions and procedures that exist within not only the PAL, but also the BFL and other areas. So, for example, if you are interested in using the k-means function within the PAL, you could actually go through this just to check that the k-means function is actually already there. And in fact, yes, we see k-means is existing. So if you don't find this table or you don't find these rows in the tables, then that's something that is maybe not ideal for you and you maybe want to check. Now, as a shortcut, I've actually got a little bit of SQL that you may want to run, which maybe just make it a little bit simpler. So let's just go to here. Here I've got a little line that does basically what we already saw to actually pull out just the PAL algorithms. So if we want, we can run that, and what we can see, that allows us to actually see the same thing, and maybe if you want to filter on function name. So if you want, you can use code like that as a way of verifying that the PAL and AFL are correctly installed and configured. So that looks good. We seem to have the algorithm, which in our case is single smooth. We seem to have it present. So the next step is to look, well, is the AFL wrapper generator available? Does it exist? Now, each time you restart the HANA server, the wrapper generator needs to be recreated, and it lives within the system schema. So within system, if we look at the procedures, we should see, is the AFL underscore wrapper underscore generator procedure there? No, it's not. So maybe this server was restarted. So we need to go and recreate that wrapper generator procedure. So how do we do that? Well, it was outlined in another video, but I'll just show you again very quickly. You actually need to go and find the wrapper generator SQL file and actually run that. Now it's outlined in the documentation how to do that, or as a quick shortcut you can just see if you actually use a FTP program, for example, to get to your HANA server, you should find within the user SAP folder, and then HDB is our instance name here, and then within exe and then your platform, in this case Linux x86 8664, and in a plugins folder you should find that there is a folder called AFL, and it's got the version of the AFL that you're probably running. In my case it's revision 52 from SPS 5. And if you look in that folder you will find a number of files, and one of them is the AFL _wrapper _generator SQL. So what we could do is transfer that over. So I've now FTP'd that to my client, to where I have Studio, and that means I can easily go into Studio and actually open that file for analysis. So if we just go to our documents, here we find the AFL _wrapper generator. So we can open that. Now all we need to do is just run this. So we just connect as system user to HANA and just run this program. You'll get an error, for example, on the drop procedure, because we know it doesn't already exist, but beyond that the procedure has been created. So now we should be in a much better state. So we've now created the HANA AFL wrapper generator. We should be ready to go ahead and run this code, because now we should be able to find the wrapper generator. It should be working. So let's clear that. Let's have another go at running this code. So what we see this time is we get some errors, and that's because a couple of things have happened. One is that the table types we already created, they exist, so we've tried to recreate them, and that's not normal. And also the column table, the signature table, we've tried to recreate that, and what's worse, we've actually inserted 3 new rows to reproduce the rows we already had within that table. So not surprisingly, things have gone wrong. So what we may need to do here, and this is good practice, is to drop the types that you've already created. So if we take the first one, we can do something similar, drop type for all 3 of our table types. Okay, and we can also drop the signature table, so drop table, and it's the signature table. Okay, that will allow us to get a clean run each time. Okay, so when these types or tables already exist. So maybe we'll clear the log and we'll have another run trying it this way. Okay, now we've got a bit further. So we've got no errors creating the types, and we've got a signature table that looks good. So, but we've still got some error messages. The AFL wrapper generator gave an error. Now if we look, it says could not execute the wrapper generator. And then later it says live cache error exception, finished with errors, see index server trace. So this means that it found the wrapper generator procedure and it ran it, but there were errors during the run of the wrapper generator. So this is where we need to go and look at the index server trace to get some idea of maybe what actually went wrong. Maybe there was something wrong in the code that we submitted. So to do that, as a system user, we can go to the administrator area, and if we go to the diagnostic files tab, and we can actually filter on index server, and it's this alert trace that we want to look at. We can see it's been updated pretty recently. So if we double click on that, we can actually now see a log of everything that happened. And we can see, for example, we get our error message here, and we get live cache error, etc. So the bottom message is pretty much what we saw in the log. Now what we need to do is to scroll up through this to try to identify exactly what had happened. We can see there's quite a lot of messages here, but we need to basically scroll through and just see what we can do to find out what's exactly going wrong. We can see we're getting some messages saying intermediate defined variable, for example, etc., but don't see any messages that are error messages as yet. Let's continue looking. So now we found something that maybe looks interesting in the log file. In fact, if we scroll across, we can see that it says the registration of the wrapper failed for the PAL TS_S invalid parameter description. So that's our clue. That's our indication that maybe something is wrong with one of the parameters that we've got. And if we go back to the code, we can see that in the signature table we have some parameters, the names of the table types, they look pretty good, and also whether they're input or output parameters. But in fact, one of the features of the PAL is that the input and output parameters need to be specified in lowercase. In this case, we used uppercase. So that's where our problem probably was. Let's change these now to lowercase in and out for our 3 parameters. We can clear the log, and let's try to run again this time. So let's run the code. And this time it goes through correctly. The wrapper generator has run and he's created a procedure for us in the sys_AFL schema. Okay, now what would happen if we wanted to maybe make some changes to this? We may change the table name, or imagine we changed the structure. The input table is actually having sales total instead of sales amount. Okay, we would now want to recreate our procedure based on a different structure, a different input table type. So what we would do there is we want to rerun. So let's rerun the code. We've already got rid of our table types in the signature table, so those will get recreated. Let's run the code. However, we see that the wrapper generator again is not too happy. Something went a little bit wrong. And there's a reason for this. And again, if we were to go and look in the index server, we would find error messages that give us a clue. But to save time, I'll just mention there are a number of table types as well as the procedure itself that get created in the sys_sys AFL schema. However, the PAL itself does not, or the wrapper generator does not remove those when you maybe want to recreate the same procedure a second time. If you want to override, it's an automatic safety feature. So what you need to do is to ensure that you delete from anything existing that you want to override. And the way it works is that you would need, within the _sys AFL schema, we would need to drop the procedure, so _sys _AFL of the name of the procedure you've created, and also you would need to drop the types, and there's basically one type created for every row that you have in your signature table. And the syntax for this is the name of the procedure followed by __tt_p, and then a number that goes up 1 for each row in your table. So in this case we have 3 rows, so we'll need to do this drop type 3 times. So we do that 1, 2, and 3. And now we should have actually removed the stuff that was already existing there, and it should work fine. So let's now clear the log and run this one again and see what happens. Now we can see that having dropped the types and dropped the procedure, the wrapper generator is able to run. So that's something you may want to bear in mind when you're working and developing applications with the PAL. And that's hopefully given you a good idea in how you can go about troubleshooting should you encounter any issues.